Hey everybody, it's Ivy League Trucker with Clint. It's still January here in the Northeast, and we've got a fresh coating of snow. Nice and fresh and beautiful, enough to make it pretty, but not too much to have to shovel. It's too much, so that's really nice. So I don't know what it's like where you are, but we've got a real winter this year here in the Northeast. Today in this episode, what I'd like to do is just tell you a couple of stories from the road, and you can get some insights from that. I was thinking this is actually a podcast by a trucker. You might be wondering what life is like for truckers a little more, so I'll give you some insights. The first story I'd like to tell you is about how some things don't really change much and other things do. And it's fun to find the things that are still haven't changed. So, in today's world of trucking, the vast amount of truck stops are really corporate locations, pilots or flying J's or Loves or TA. Truck stops dominate out there. And while these are newer and they tend to have pretty nice facilities, they're also the places where all the new drivers go. And the reason for that is the big mega companies that employ all the first year drivers have fuel contracts for fuel discounts with these truck stops. And I know in my first year, I was with Schneider, we could only go to Flying J's and pilots. And so it forces all the new drivers to get concentrated in these truck stops. So as you can imagine, that tends to be the place where the guys don't know what they're doing. They tend to back into you, or if you park on the end of the aisle, they'll rip your nose off in the middle of the night by turning too close, etc. So I had to do that for the first year, but as soon as I got with my new company, a smaller company, you can refuel anywhere. And I really like going to the older independent truck stops because they're more interesting. There's less of them out there, and they all have some kind of history. So a couple winters ago, I was driving up toward Canada, up I-87 on the east side of New York State, and it's a beautiful route. You come up through the Hudson River Valley, get north of Albany and Saratoga, and that 150-mile stretch from Saratoga up to the Canadian border, up to Ticonderoga, is really beautiful. You can see the peaks of the Adirondacks off to your left, off to the west. You can see the high peaks and the wind blowing the snow off the peaks. And on your right, you have rivers and lakes. It's a really beautiful route. And there's a section of it where there's not even any cell service. But you have to be careful because the weather does come from the west. And in the winter, you can get icing or heavy snow conditions pretty quickly. So you have to have in mind where you might be stopping. One night I was doing that route and kind of in the upper Adirondack section of it, and I was running out of hours. I don't know if I've explained hours to you, but we can work 14 hours and drive 11 of those 14. And once you get past to 14 hours, you're a pumpkin. You have to stop and take a 10-hour break. Those are the federal rules to keep things safe. So I was running out of hours and rolling through the mountains, and I pulled up a program that I have called Trucker Path, which is an app on your phone, and it's buying for truckers, and it has all the fuel places and parking places and comments and reviews from truckers, to be able to find places. And I saw this place. It just said there were fuel pumps there, and it looked like there was a place to park. So I did it, and I pulled off the exit, and you can't see it from the exit. I had to go about half a mile down the road, and I turn around the corner, and the name of the place is Betty Beaver's Truck Stop. I thought, that's an interesting name, and there's, a convenience store in the front and a restaurant, like a diner, and some car fuel pumps, and in the back, there's a dirt lot, these very old pumps. And the most hilarious thing about this place was, as you'll see in the show graphic this week, the sign is pretty interesting. It's a three-dimensional sign with Betty Beavers and a halter top with, let's just say she's buxom, and it's in 3D. And as I looked at it, I really laughed out loud. I thought, how does this place still have this name in the internet era? And how can they get away with that sign? Well, a couple of reasons. One, it's pretty rural. And two, truckers are probably the most conservative group of folks you can find out there. Believe me, I did the research online. They're ridiculously conservative. So most of them wouldn't have a problem with it. But I know some of my female friends might have been offended. So I went in the back and I went to park, and it's just a dirt lot and it wasn't very well lit. And I rolled past some pumps that look like they're out of the 1960s, with the old handles and the glass reservoirs on top, that sort of thing. Those were the diesel pumps. They still worked. So I parked back there. And then in the morning, I went in and used their bathroom. The diner, unfortunately, was closed and they were renovating it. Hopefully, I haven't been up there in a while. It's open now. But the next morning, I had a little bit of time and I walked from the truck stop and found a trail that went off the road and over the saddle of a mountain into a really beautiful valley. And so that was really nice. And as I was walking back, I saw the sign again. I just had to laugh. Betty Beaver's truck stop, still in operation. So that is the kind of place. There's a number of them that I know on all my routes that are the old traditional truck stops. They haven't changed a whole lot. They usually have a diner, and there's usually a mixture of truckers and locals that go to these places, and they're just really fun to stop at. They're not as prevalent as they used to be because of all the corporate truck stops, but I really do enjoy them and sometimes have a laugh. Hey, just day in the life here in mid-January. I'm here at chemical company, small private chemical company in East Stroudsburg, PA. Probably hear a truck idling, doing what we do a lot of is waiting. Had a 9 o'clock appointment, got here on time, and got on the rack to get loaded, and they ain't ready. They don't have the product ready yet, so they're still mixing it up. So I'm doing what we like to do is get out of the damn truck and walk. It's about 40 degrees and sunny, so that's not bad. Pretty good for January in PA. Today we'll be loading sodium hydroxide, which is a caustic hazmat. Don't get it on your skin or eyes. And taking it to a steel plant in Ohio. And there they use it for, I think they use it for cleaning their rollers and cleaning stuff. It's, yeah, you definitely don't want to get it on you. So, wear your PPE or personal protective equipment while unloading it. Yeah. So stretching the legs, trying to stay healthy out here. We'll see how long it takes them to be ready. I call this section When Mr. Physics is Not Your Friend. What most people don't realize about tractor trailers and semis going down the road is that they weigh a lot. And a fully loaded tractor trailer in the U.S. weighs 80,000 pounds. That's 80,000 pounds, otherwise known as 40 tons. For reference, your car weighs about 4 to 5,000 pounds, so about 2 to 2.5 tons. So fully loaded tractor trailers are nearly 20 times the weight of your car. So if you've ever tried to run into something that weighed a lot more than you realize it doesn't move much. And early on, I thought I would encounter more kind of idiots in cars who like to either race with trucks or cut them off or do brake checks, get in front of them and hit the brakes and really stupid crap like that. After, well over 5 years in the industry, I really haven't had very much of that. Most people, I think, do respect the size and weight of trucks and don't like to hang around about them. And if you think you should hang around them, that's a bad idea. So stay away from them. I think Smitty mentioned that. And as drivers, we're trained to think about not only ourselves, but all the cars around us and assume they don't, know these things and just, assume it's our daughter in each one of them and try to create a safe situation. So anticipate them. If they get uppity, just back off, slow down until they get away from you, that sort of thing. Don't engage. But if we come in contact with you, you're going to lose. And typically in the front, we'll push your car, push it sideways won't run over it, but we'll push it all over the place and push it into other vehicles and push it off the roadway. So the other thing is we can't accelerate or stop nearly as fast as you can. So, we're the big lumbering behemoth, and if you can punch it to get ahead of us on an on-ramp, do that. If you're unsure, just hit the brakes and drop in behind us. But we cannot get out of your way or move or accelerate or decelerate as fast as you. And also, if we jerk the wheel too much, what we're gonna do is see, the trailer loaded weighs 45,000 pounds, and the tractor is like 33. So no, I'm sorry, the trailer loaded is more like 50 to 55,000 pounds, and the tractor's like 25,000 pounds. So what'll happen is that trailer is just gonna keep going, and if we jerk the wheel, the tractor's gonna move out from in front of it, and that's how you jackknife. The trailer keeps going, now you're not in front of it, and you just flop over to the side and jackknife. So if we react too much, we're gonna jackknife and roll over, and especially a tanker, we will roll over. So we just can't react and move that fast. The other thing I learned early and other people don't realize is that these rigs can get away from you going downhill, and they're so heavy that as soon as you crest a hill and start down it, it just takes off. I mean, it really does take off, and it's very heavy. And that's why we have 2 forms of braking that we use. Our brakes are actually run by air pressure, and the way they work is there's a huge spring in there that locks out the brakes, that if there's no air pressure applied, if you lose air pressure, then the spring, a very strong spring, is just gonna lock up the brakes. It's the air pressure which actually releases the brakes. So, we've got a compressor in our tractor and air lines. Those are those hoses you see between the tractor and the trailer, and we have primary and secondary air to pressurize the brakes in the trailer. The other thing is we don't just use our primary brakes or our service brakes on the trailer and tractor going downhill. If we did, we would burn them out. So I'm sure you've seen the runaway truck ramps on the downhills on the interstates. What happens is if you apply the brakes for too long going downhill, it's so heavy and putting so much pressure on the brakes that the brakes will overheat and you will completely lose your brakes. The brakes will actually expand and lose the ability to make contact with the drum, and you'll have total brake failure. You've probably seen smoking brakes or even on fire brakes on trucks where they used them too much. So how do we slow down and maintain our speed when we can't really use our brakes like you do on a car all the way downhill? Many downhill stretches on the interstates and even local roads, they're like miles and miles long. So we use engine braking, which is we put the truck in a lower gear, and then we let the momentum of the truck push back through the transmission and back to the engine. And that's what you hear when you hear the big trucks coming downhill. That's engine braking. If you're coming down a long stretch, you just kind of find a gear and let it ride on that gear and just use the service brakes to tap it down every once in a while. So you're using that reverse compression on the engine to slow you down, and we absolutely need that. So that's kind of a quick, like, trucker tip as to how it works. But those runaway truck ramps are for real. They're usually sand or soft gravel, and if you lose your brakes going downhill, you're gonna die, unless you use one of these. And if you go into one, the truck sinks into the gravel or the sand, to arrest it. And those are there to save our lives. So be respectful of trucks when they're trying to slow down, and that's just a little bit about how things work for us. Hey, everybody. I call this story, Maybe It's Just a Bad Hair Day. It was the summer of 25 last year, and I was getting my pump and hoses washed at my home tank wash, which is near our truck yard. And okay, well, what is a tank wash? A tank wash is where we get the liquid trailer tanks washed out. And, they have bays you pull into, and, they're washing out anything from oils to chemicals to caustics to environmental stuff to you name it. So they have detergent washes and steam washes and hot water washes and all this stuff. And, it's guys in hard hats and harnesses and, boots, and it's a dirty job. It's a hard and dirty job, but we have to do it because we can't cross-contaminate, liquid products. So, often and then our pumps, we have a pump on the back of the truck and hoses to, pump the product off of the trailers. And about half the time we do it, and the other half of the time the customer has pumps and hoses. So anyway, I was pulling into this one, and I know most of the guys here because it's one at our yard, at our home yard. But this was a guy I didn't know, and I came up to the bay, I got signed in, and then looking at him and trying to get him to tell me which bay to go into, and he's kind of mumbling, and he comes up to the truck, and it's just not clear. And I started to get a little frustrated. I was thinking, this is the easiest part of your job, telling me which bay to go to before you go back there and do the wash. But eventually we got to figure it out. And I was thinking, I got pulled in, parked the truck there, and then I take the hoses off the rack, and that's all I have to do is just, set them down by the truck. But I offered to help them a little bit, connecting them and all that sort of stuff. And I was thinking, this is a new guy here. I don't know him at all. I don't know his background, where he's coming from, or anything like that. And also, I have no idea if this is the best job he'll ever have or the worst job he'll ever have, and if he's on the way up or the way down. What his personal situation is, his family and life situation, and what he may be dealing with that could be driving, how he's not that communicative. So I leaned in a little bit and, helped him out a little more than I normally would. Just gave him a few pointers. And then I got back in the cab and let him, continuing would do the hoses and the pump and all that stuff. And I just was reminded as I was sitting there that, every person out there doing a job, if they're doing it at least half decently, they're just trying to get it done. And you don't know what their situation is. So that really made me pause and take a beat as I thought more about that. And I thought how I was frustrated when I first interacted with him, but that wasn't helpful. And also, I have no idea where he's coming from. You know, Also, I thought about how I was landing with him. Was I helpful? Did I, or was I not helpful? That sort of thing. And, I can also be thinking, gosh, I've lost a whole lot and here I am. I'm a trucker and I'm not happy about that. Or I could be thankful that day that I've got a job and be thankful for other things. It's really kind of a choice. I was also reminded of a sermon or teaching I heard from Harry Reeder, who was the pastor of Perimeter Church in Atlanta for many years. He came and did the speaking at a men's retreat I went to. And this is a long time ago. It's like 25 years ago. And he talked about character and the marks of character. He said the first one is, what do you do when nobody's looking, right? What do you do when you're just accountable to yourself and to your own standards? The second was, how do you treat people who can help you in no way? They can't do anything for you or help you or give you anything you need. And the third was, I can't remember the third one, but I'm sure it was equally important. I thought about that a little bit. I was like, okay, well, how am I treating this guy? And in reality, the situation was, it's me and this guy in this hot, steamy tank wash. We're both men made in the image of God. We both have the same infinite worth before God based on the fact that we bear God's image, not based on our education, not based on our background, not even based on our behavior, but that we're image bearers of an infinite and loving God that gives us value as humans. And really everything else doesn't matter a whole lot because everything else is flexible and can change. And it just reminded me to be thankful for common grace and just the being treated, maybe how you don't deserve to be treated, and just try to treat others as you would like to be treated. I mean, that's what Jesus said, right? So in my old life, I had more of a chance to deal with folks who might not have been at my socioeconomic level. And now, in a different relationship, but it doesn't change anything, kind of the responsibility to treat each other as we would like to be treated. So he finished up, and I went back there and put my hoses back on and everything, and I actually gave him a tip, like a $3 or $4 tip. Now, that is not required or expected at all in this kind of blue collar to blue collar environment, but I thought, it's my first interaction with him. I don't always do it, but I know these guys don't make much money, and it's just kind of a gesture. So I did that, and I thought, it's not the big stuff, it's the simple stuff and how we treat each other. And also, in every day and whatever the situation, whether it's positive or negative, or whether we're stressed or not stressed, we can choose to show our frustration. We can choose to let other people, try to make our problems other people's problems, or we can just choose to be kind, and we can choose to give others what somebody once told me was called the judgment of charity, meaning you don't know, just be charitable in how you do it. Another one of my pastors shared that with me. And so I walked away from that, felt pretty good about how I'd interacted, but also how it would have been so easy for me to be frustrated and kind of be short with the guy. And that would have been our first interaction and probably would have colored his perception of me for a long time, even if I had kept dealing with him. And as far as what he was dealing with, I had no idea. We chatted a little bit just to say hi, how long you been doing this, that sort of thing. But in the end, maybe it was just a bad hair day. You never know. So there you have it. Just wanted to give you a sense of a little bit of insight into some aspects of the trucking life and one relational one there at the end. And I guess the theme there is we can only control what we do and how we choose to react to situations, whether they're positive or negative, and a little bit about character and how it relates to that. Just a sense of being thankful, I think, leads us to a place where we can be a little more gracious with other people, which by definition is treating people not how they deserve to be treated, whether it's good or bad or ugly. So I guess the assignment out of that would be maybe try to apply some of that this week and see what happens. And again, the show notes have some references to some of the things that were talked about trucking industry wise to enlighten you if you're interested. And also, would love to have your feedback at ivyleaguetrucker@gmail.com. And that's referenced at the bottom of the show notes as well, as to things you'd like to hear about or how you're feeling about the podcast or any kind of feedback at all. We would appreciate it. Thanks much. Take care. It's Clint. Shiny side up. Bye.